Hello, everyone, and welcome to the BuzzStream podcast. I'm your host, Vince Nero, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by Bekki Ramsay, the digital PR manager with Mojo Mortgages, USwitch, a bunch of other great mortgage-related companies. Thanks so much for joining us, Bekki.
No worries at all. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Quick reminder before we get into everything, I just want to remind people to like, subscribe, comment, leave a review. All that good stuff goes towards helping me have more great guests like Bekki and getting these tips and great insights from all of our great guests out there. So, reminder quickly like and subscribe. That would help us out a lot. So, Bekki, we just met, but I've seen you on LinkedIn in the past, and you posted something really interesting, specifically about kind of re-angling existing mortgages. Sorry, existing content.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, a little Freudian slip here. I think another reason that you stood out to me was because prior to me working at BuzzStream, I worked for a company called Homebuyer, which did first-time homebuyer loans. So it was in the mortgage space. And my antenna went up a little bit because, I have a little extra knowledge in that space and know how hard it can be to create content, pitch content. So I really wanted to dig in today about this specific post and kind of walking through Mojo Mortgage campaign ideation, but then specifically this idea of repitching content because it's tough to do. You don't always know when to do it or how to do it. So before I start, and don't mean to put you on the spot, I like to do like a little icebreaker sometimes. Is there a piece of content that you've seen lately that really stuck out to you? It can be, it doesn't necessarily have to be digital PR. It can be social, something, just kind of something in the ad space, PR
Yeah.
space.
I'm gonna be really basic here, but my name is Becky, so I'm living up to it. But just the whole brat summer, like it is literally taking over every single aspect of everything. Here for it. Is a 29-year-old woman who writes about mortgages all day. I'm still feel like I'm having a brat summer listening to it at the same time. And yeah, I think the fact that I feel like Charlie XCX was very like sort of niche. Well, not niche. She was obviously quite popular, but for her to break into the fact that even like my nana knows who she is now, I think it's really interesting. You've got coffee shops making brat summer green matcha lattes. You've got people wearing like little like t-shirts of to say that brat on like their babies and stuff. I just think it's really, really inspirational that she's rebranded and literally she's taken over summer. So yeah, Charlie XCX. I didn't expect her to get a shout out, but yeah, she's the one for me.
Yeah, there we go. Love it. We're recording this August 15th, so summer's coming to a close. It's
Yeah,
starting to rebrand again.
yeah. Right.
Brett Winter, Brett Fall, yeah, Brett Autumn. Um, so let's talk about Mojo Mortgages to kind
Yeah,
of explain what the brand is and maybe how your role fits into that. Because I did mention you work on a couple other mortgage related brands.
yeah, of course. So I joined actually Mojo Mortgages, next week it'll be exactly 6 months, which has flown over. So yeah, before that I worked at an agency and I've been in so many different industries for working on an array of clients. But obviously, like I said, I've just moved into mortgages half a year ago. So Mojo Mortgages, they're like a leading mortgage broker that offer an array of products, whether it's for first time buyers and for home movers, that kind of thing. And the thing that's great is that with them being fee free, so literally you can go to them and not get charged, and they have access to like an array of different mortgage lenders over 70, so highly competitive. And I think that's really great is that we use a lot of data internally, which is actually great for PR as well, but it really enables us to offer customers like a completely personalized experience that allows them to get the best mortgage deal for them, the best mortgage product. And that's why I'm really proud that we have lots of internal tools, like data tools that we've created that literally help customers buy their first home. And as a recent person who's just bought their first property with their boyfriend, it's really impressive. And I'm very proud to work for Mojo. So yeah.
Is Mojo just UK based?
Yes, they are just UK based. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know off the top of your head? I mean, again, this is me just being interested in
Mhm.
mortgage space. Is the mortgage process much different in the UK than it is in the US?
Yes and no from what I'm still obviously getting used to the industry, but there's different terms and stuff. Things do seem to be called completely different things. So it might be more similar than what it seems, but from when I do research, I've tried to get links essentially in American publications, and there seems to be a different process and how you do things compared to the UK. So
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, we can maybe touch on that a little bit later too, because I'm always interested in taking a brand, like with Homebuyer, it was specifically in the US.
yeah,
So like, are there options or is there potential to pitch internationally? But yeah, when you get into those, like when the process is a little different, I feel like it can maybe take away a bit from the message of the piece.
yeah.
So let's talk about this initial campaign that you did. You talked a lot about, using internal data. Was this a post that you were able to leverage some internal data?
Yeah, literally that. So we've got a great data team internally that obviously help people get mortgages, but there's also an amazing woman called Mel who can also help with digital PR campaigns. So we've got access to every mortgage we've ever given out, and obviously we can transform that into PR campaigns. And obviously being like GDPR, like being aware of what we're using and being careful of how we use it and all those kind of things, working closely with compliance. But the great thing is we obviously have access to it, and that's literally the data that we use for this campaign that I discussed on LinkedIn. So the campaign itself is the average age of a first-time buyer around the UK. It's a topic that gets discussed quite a lot, and it's always around the same age, around 32, around 33. But we wanted to do something completely different at Mojo and delve into it a little bit more. So we wanted to find out the exact month, so we looked at our internal data for that, but then we also wanted to see how it differed around the UK. It might be the same, well, it will be the same in different states in America, but I live in the northeast of England, which is a lot cheaper than it is in London. So you tend to get on the property ladder a lot earlier, or if at all, compared to London. And so we wanted to make it clear what the average is so that people feel like they're not behind or they maybe got on a little bit earlier if it is like a goal of yours essentially. So yeah, we used our internal data to find out the averages and then looked at also deposit size and house price as well. And that's why I think we got almost an upper hand and added something new to the news by digging a little bit deeper. So yeah.
Yeah, that is such a great advantage to be able to lean on some of that data. Shout out to Mel, I think you
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
for the help on this one. Do you have much in the way of friction in terms of like accessing data? I know that that can also a lot of times be kind of a blocker, especially if you're an agency working. I'm curious what that looks like at Mojo, and then maybe how that's looked in the past for you, having worked at an agency.
Yeah, of course. I know it is like the privilege of working in house. You normally have access to data and you have access to it quicker. So, like I said, we're very data driven at Mojo. So, specifically here, we have access to lots of tools that we've created. So, I can actually go in and access data myself, use it for reactive commentary, and get it proofed by compliance, make sure everything's happy, all of that. But when I was on and when I worked in agency side, naturally, it is a lot more difficult to have access to that sort of data. And it's very time consuming for the in-house person to collate it. As someone who's now actually on the other side and has their own to-do lists and their own goals and KPIs and that kind of thing, I sympathize with both sides. But I think the thing that's interesting I think the thing that's interesting is that we don't just need to use internal data. So I actually listened to a webinar recently, and it's something I've been doing for years, but it's great to see that journalists at the Financial Times and Financial Advisor were discussing it as well. But they said they're happy to accept data that's external data, which you then almost make your own by like combining it. So you might get demographic
Mhm.
data and then finance data from another place, combine them, and you're creating your own statistics. And so that's one way of creating brand new data that no one else has seen. And I think as well, just being mindful of actually what is out there, what sort of data. There's lots of blog posts, there's even on BuzzStream of different places to access data. And I think it's just a case of continuously actually looking at these sources such as DataGov, YouGov, Statista, all these different things, and get it into the back of your mind. So when it comes to creating a campaign or sending a chaser, which this whole podcast episode is about, having that at the forefront of your mind and adding something new. So yeah.
Do you typically like look at this data and try to find a story, or do you have a story in mind and then you're going to the data team and asking?
It can actually work both ways. So this is the thing that I think that's so exciting about PR is you can almost be you can find a problem and you can help solve the problem, or you can uncover the problem yourself and then you're solving it. And if that makes sense. So one thing I'd say when you're coming out with a campaign is don't just pull data and say this is a problem. You need to actually be given a solution at the end. Let's not scaremonger people. But yeah, I think that's the great thing is feel like when you're really invested in PR and you become an expert and you read in the news quite a lot, you'll start to see timely hooks journalists are talking about, and you'll start to think of different ways that you can contribute to that with data. Or they might have published something and you can add to it. So actually one of the reasons that the average age of a first time buyer campaign was such a success is that we actually added a last minute secondary angle to it based on something that we'd seen in the news. So the Bank of England had announced that many under 30-year-olds are getting long mortgage terms, so like 30, 35 years. And I realise I'm actually speaking in mortgage lingo here, so I'll drop back out of that since people might not understand. But what it means is that essentially a 28-year-old might be getting a mortgage that lasts 35 years. So by the time they pay their mortgage off, they'll be very close to retiring. In that scene, the reason they do it is that their mortgage payments will be a lot lower each month. And that sounds great, but really the bad thing is that you're obviously paying your mortgage off too close to your retirement, and it makes it harder for later life planning. So this was all over the news. I didn't create this story. The Bank of England did. So additional angle we essentially went with in the campaign was predicting when these first time buyers are likely to pay off their mortgage based on what mortgage
Right.
term we're going with internally. So the Northeast might be joining the property ladder at 29, but only have a mortgage term of 30. So they'll be mortgage free at 59, whereas London might not be mortgage free until 68. So actually differentiating between the different regions allowed me to, first of all, connect with the journalists when I was sending these chaser emails because I'm giving them something entirely different. But it also meant that I was able to contact a lot more journalists by digging into the data deeper and linking it to something that's happening in the news. So yeah.
So do you actually put that link in the pitch? Like, hey, this study came out and we also did a follow-up kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah,
literally that.
interesting.
There's absolutely no shame, even if like obviously you wouldn't do it for a direct competitor, but say someone else like uncovered a study and it relates to yours, like there's absolutely no shame in including that in the introduction of the email because you're telling the journalist that you know that they
Mhm.
covered that campaign, they might be interested in this one too, and you're almost giving them a reason to like internally link between the two articles as well. So you're like putting your SEO savvy hat on as well. So
Yeah, I like that. I've referenced it, but I've never actually linked to the campaign. That's a great idea.
Mhm. I just think it makes the journalist's life a little bit easier as well. Like they have so much they need to do, like day to day, that literally giving them the link means they don't have to go searching for it as well. The evidence is there for them.
Yeah, I mean, totally. Whatever we can do to make their life easier and make it like a turnkey process. I feel like that's where people have had the most success and probably where the most people have failed when they forget to do that.
Yeah, literally.
So, Becky, let's get into the kind of re-outreaching or
Mhm.
re-angling, however you want to say it. I don't think re-outreaching is a word. This campaign, it sounded like it did well in the first round, right?
Yeah.
And you were able to kind of ride that wave of this retiring age or mortgage payoff age. So, what made you decide to kind of re-angle and repitch this?
Yeah, so there's a number of different reasons. First of all, I had nothing in outreach. I'd created the next digital PR campaign and it was sat with compliance. I think when you're a PR, you have to be proactive and
Mm,
outreach and something. So I thought I'd reassess an old campaign. And I was actually looking that morning at which one I could add a timely hook to when just so conveniently, it actually picked up an organic citation from the Daily Mail and This Is Money. So this is actually, I'd say, a pretty much a top tip of mine is be mindful when I don't like calling them old campaigns because I've never think a campaign's done with. I always think you can get more like juice out of it in the future. But be mindful of when a campaign actually generates a link and don't just add it to your link tracker and be really happy with the coverage, but actually be like actually look at the article, read it, understand why it's been picked up again. Often it's because something's happened in the news and your statistic might have been used or referenced within that. So the journalist is almost telling you that right now there's a timely hook, there's a reason for you to be jumping on this. So that's exactly what happened. The journalist spotted something, went out with it, and then I thought, right, okay, I'm going to jump on this too. So yeah, that's the main reason I ended up re-outreaching it. But then also there was a little gut feeling that didn't I didn't feel completely done with the campaign as well. It had been really successful and it had done really well, but there was still some dream publications that I wanted to tick off, and I knew that after a few weeks of emailing the journalist, I'd give it another go. And thankfully, it worked. Through I can get into more tips later because that could be a whole other thing. But re-outreaching it to the I opened it a few times, it worked, and we ended up getting further coverage from the Financial Times Advisor as I posted in LinkedIn, but we also generated coverage from the Telegraph as well. So
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome to hear the success there. So you mentioned kind of looking for citations
yeah.
as kind of maybe a signal. Anything else? You say, you keep looking at your campaigns, keep them top of mind. What else kind of would stand out for you?
Definitely. I'd also say as well, literally the open rate on BuzzStream is such a godsend. So you can literally click on that date last opened and put it in ascending or descending order, and you can see if a journalist has opened an email recently. So what I tend to do every few weeks is go through all my past campaigns from the past couple of months and see if a journalist has opened a campaign that I sent them 4, 5, 6 weeks ago. And I think you'll be surprised often that they have opened it recently. And that's when I get my little inspector gadget hat on, try and work out why they're opening it weeks later. Perhaps something's happened in the news again, the time with Hook, or perhaps they were on annual leave, or maybe they wanted to cover it at the time, but there was other more presidential stuff going on in the news, like a general election and everything that we've had happening in England. But sorry, the UK. um, yeah, so try and find out that reason why they've potentially opened it and investigate a little bit more, see what articles they've been writing about that they might have looked at. They might have looked at your campaign. So yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, just kind of as a disclaimer for people listening or watching, open rates can be somewhat deceiving, but for specifically what you're saying, I think, Becky, like when they open it a few weeks later, like that,
Mhm.
I think that that's probably like a safe signal.
Yeah.
Um, just for some background, like there are, like Apple, for instance, anytime that your campaign gets sent to an Apple phone and they view it, like
Yeah.
that counts as an open. Like they don't even have to open it; they like view it in their inbox.
Mhm.
So there are some kind of mitigating circumstances there with open rates to just kind of be aware of. But yeah, I mean, that makes total sense. And I even see like sometimes open rates can be like if you see somebody opened it 1,000 times, like they
Yeah.
probably didn't. Obviously, like that's some kind of bug or whatever.
Mhm.
It's on a redirect chain or something. But you can kind of get a pretty good sense when you look at the open rates. If most of them are open 3 times and then this one's open like 7 times, like so probably a good chance that this was actually opened a bit more. So you can
Yeah.
take the open rates with a grain of salt, but you can use them directionally, I've found.
Definitely. Yeah, no, for sure. I think as well,
Yeah.
it's even like the content of what you're putting into your pitch. So also include like a boilerplate. So we always explain what Mojo
Mhm.
mortgages like do. So that in the future, if the journalist is looking for an expert comment from a mortgage advisor, hopefully they'll go in their inbox, search for previous campaigns, previous pitches, and Mojo will appear. So you should definitely be doing the same for your clients and ensuring that even if they're not directly looking for that campaign, they'll find your client and what you can provide weeks later.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I think it was Mark Roth
Yeah.
kind of put it to me where he was like, I try to do it in with like kind of keywords,
Yeah.
almost like keyword optimize your pitches so that a journalist can refer back to it. And like, how would a journalist want to search for this in their email
Yeah.
inbox? Yeah.
Literally that. So the boilerplate, obviously, you don't want it too salesy. You don't want it to be like buy our product right now, but you need the keywords, potentially the keywords that you're trying to rank for as well. So you say, for example, you're building lots of links for a sleep expert, highlight them as a sleep expert and explain what it is that they can comment on. Is it insomnia? Is it, I'm trying to think of all these other things, and mine's went blank from a lack of sleep last night, ironically. But yeah, for industry keywords that hopefully the journalist will then find them that way. It's a great tip by Mark Roth. He's a great guy.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, so we touched on kind of some of these signals for repitching, re-angling. When you do come up with your new hook, let's talk a little bit about the kind of the process. Because I remember working in an agency, the
Mhm.
hardest part was like, okay, I have this post that I worked on, and, and it's a little easier in-house, mind you. But I had this post I worked on, this was my deliverable or whatever for this month. It can be sometimes tough to like pitch to a client that you're going to repitch something, and talk me through that process, either in-house or an agency of kind of, okay, now I need to write something. Now I need to find a designer. Now I need to find some new data. Talk us
Mhm.
through that process because I feel like that can feel a little daunting at least.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think to be honest, I've always been quite lucky that I've always worked for clients. Like I've been doing PR for nearly 7 years, but I've always had clients that are quite open to me trying different things. And I think the reason that is through like being honest and transparent throughout the entire process. So campaigns aren't always going to land, and that's also important and why you can bring them back out. But when I went to speak to a client, when I went to an agency and say, oh, we're going to finish this campaign temporarily, I'd always say it's on pause. I'd never say it's done, like we're never going to get links from it. And then when it come to actually bringing it back into outreach, whether it's via email or call or however you speak to your client, I would just explain the reasoning behind it. And the end of the day, you shouldn't be outreaching something if there's not a genuine reason behind it. At the end of the day, us PRs are helping creating news, so there has to be that hook. There has to be a reason for the journalist to care. So in order to bring the client on board, whether it's in-house or an agency, give them the reason for why you're doing this right now. Almost sell it to the client before you're selling it to the journalist. And if you can't sell it to the client, then you're certainly not going to be able to sell it to the journalist. Um,
That's a great point.
yeah.
Yeah.
So in terms of getting the sign off, you can do it that way. And then it is a case of, I think collaboration is honestly the key with the success of most campaigns. I think I hate this phrase, but PR is seen as sexy like it is. And when you've got work on, but more like, I don't know, like not as creative, perhaps like creative in their way, but just different jobs essentially. A lot of people do get excited with the potential of helping with PR campaigns. So collaborate together and put an article into a Slack channel and say, oh, does anyone know what hook I could go with this? What's the most enticing part of this? People might give you different spins or angles that you can go with. When I was at an agency, the sales team and the account managers were amazing at doing this because they were constantly, because they didn't work in it, so that they basically were able to come up with more ideas, which counterproductive almost. So yeah, and then just collaborate with people in terms of data. Like I'm very fortunate that I've really enjoyed data. I love working with it, but I know that that's not everyone's strong point. But there will be someone within your agency or in-house who'll be able to help you. Even if it is just using Google searches and making it more timely, giving the journalist a reason to care. So yeah.
Yeah, that's all great advice. I'd say my experience with the data full, at least in with BuzzStream, even echoed by Stephen Panico, who is our CMO and who has done this in the past, is make sure that you have a clear set of data, like you know what data you need to pull to tell the story,
Mhm.
because going back to pull data can sometimes that's where it starts to become a little bit of a logjam and extra stress on the dev team, and you can kind of
Yeah.
sour some relationships if you're not careful.
Yeah. No, you completely, very, very valid point as well. Make sure the data actually exists before telling the client you're going to do something as well. That's definitely rule.
Yeah, great. Okay, so now we can get onto the fun part of, okay, now we got this new data, new angle that is maybe in the news, or your sales team perhaps has given you some insights, your customer service team. Well, walk us through, okay, now we got to find new journalists.
Yeah.
We got to, you mentioned a little bit of like repitching to old journalists who might have been
Yeah.
interested, but let's talk about not treading over the same targets, I think is the way that you mentioned it in your LinkedIn post.
Yeah, that's rule number one is obviously don't send the pitch to journalists that have already covered it. So one thing you have to be is really meticulous with how you actually send your email. So making sure that you like cross through or mark a successful placement on BuzzStream so that you know when it comes to sending a potential repitch in 6 weeks, 2 months, 6 months, whenever it is, you know that you're not going to send it back to them. And one thing I'd actually advise is don't just write successful placement for the journalist, but also for the whole sector of the publication. So if a personal finance journalist at the Express like covers a campaign, make sure you're not sending it to another personal finance journalist, because it's already been done. I think it's okay to send it to a different industry if you're sending a different angle almost, but make sure you're just not stepping on a journalist's toes if someone else has already covered it.
What do you think, like, the timeline is between, like, say they have somebody else has covered it in the finance sector, they've covered
Right.
something about mortgage prices dropping or something, and now you
Yeah.
have a new story. What is that time frame? I mean, it might be different for every industry, but yeah,
Yeah.
what's your thought on that?
I think it I think it can differ, like, on the industry, but also on what you're actually outreaching as well. Like, are you adding something to what someone else has already done? If so, get that in outreach straight away because you're adding to the story. And like I said before, you're giving a journalist like a reason to internally link. Whereas if this has happened, it's happened to every PR, it's happened to me multiple times where I've thought of this amazing idea, created the campaign, and just as I'm about to outreach it, I realized someone got in there like the week before. With that one, you need to try and differentiate between how yours is different and how theirs is, and what your upper hand is, and where you can get coverage that they haven't. But if they've unfortunately, so you got coverage everywhere, I would wait like a couple of months, maybe 2 months, and in that meantime, be trying to find a different hook or thinking of a different angle, a different spin that can make yours different, essentially. This has even happened to me recently, and I'm gutted because it was a gold mine of an idea and someone got in there. But my time will come to outreach it, and I know that it'll work. But yeah, the one thing I will say is though that there's many ways to find new contacts as well. So to take it back to your original question as well of how do you know how to find new journalists? I constantly think of new tips and I'm always writing them down because random ideas pop to me all the time with this one. But my number one tip would be looking at competitors' links. You should definitely be tracking your competitors' link citations, coverage, looking at what they're doing month on month and literally putting it in a Google sheet and seeing what coverage they're getting. Like you should know just as much about your competitors as you know about your own clients. But the one thing I'll say is when I say competitors, people often assume you mean your direct competitors. So if you've got a kitchen brand looking at another kitchen brand, but I think we need to take it one step further and actually look at the industry as a whole. So you've got a kitchen brand, also look at a bed brand or look at a garden shed brand and see what links they're getting because they're most likely to be getting links from home publications that you're also looking to seek. So find journalists that way. And then also don't forget about international competitors as well. When I worked at an agency, I was it's a bit different with mortgages with it being UK based, but when I worked at an agency, I knew all the US competitors of my clients and would always be looking at what they're doing, what campaigns they're creating, what links they're generating, because I knew that I could target the end publications as well with my campaigns. So that would be my number one tip. A couple of other tips is using a Google Chrome extension called Similar Sites. It's a fantastic Google Chrome extension. It's a little bit addictive. It's the easiest thing to use, but you literally just type in stylist.co.uk, click the button, and it'll give you 10 more publications. And you can see why it's time consuming because you can just keep going through them. But one thing I will say is over time, you'll start to understand your industry a bit, know these publications off like the top of your head. Um, Another privilege of working in an agency, which I've had to get used to with going in house, is you've got access to all of these links from a range of different clients. Like, actually look at other clients' links and see what links they're generating and target those publications, obviously, if they're speaking about like a relevant topic. So keeping on track on everyone, essentially, it might spark interest. And then also just the standard site search. So, like I mentioned earlier, the average age of a first time buyer campaign did really well, but didn't completely hit the nail on the head because there's a couple of publications that were a dream publication, and I knew they'd be interested in the campaign, but I just had to find the right journalist. So I literally site searched Telegraph. So I looked at other journalists that I didn't contact the first time and sent them it the second time, and luckily that's how we then got the coverage. So yeah.
Yeah, a lot of great tips to unpack there. So I love that, like having your like dream publications,
Yeah.
maybe doing it site search, similar sites. Yeah, I definitely use that. I love that Chrome extension.
Yeah.
I've also noticed ChatGPT can actually be pretty
Right.
helpful. Depends on the model you have. As long as you have the most recent one that's pulling from recent data, that can be helpful for that. Yeah, so many great tips, Becky. I think in the LinkedIn post you also mentioned expert commentary.
Yeah.
So say you have your post, you have your new kind of hook. Do
Mhm.
you tailor commentary to the new journalists that you're looking for? Do you just gather a bunch of quotes? Like, how do you go about that?
Yeah, of course. So I actually do something completely different. And when I send my first pitch out, I don't actually include an expert comment. And I know a lot of PRs will be against that. But in my eyes, I know that if a journalist wants to cover it and they want it, they'll literally, it means they're going to email me back and say, have you got an expert comment on this? And I'll send one then. But one thing that I do is it enables me to send that chaser email and say, hi, yeah, like I know that you've opened this email a couple of times, and what I'll then do is I'll suggest an exclusive comment specifically for them. I don't really believe in these mass expert comments that just get sent out, because one thing you need to be mindful of when you're outreaching is the demographic of the publication. Like Refinery 29 has got a different demographic to the Times, but they might both be interested in single homeowners. So what I will do is when I send my chaser email, um, I always send my emails through BuzzStream through individually send. And what I'll do is I'll have my email on like the right, and I'll be looking at the author bios and what they've recently discussed and have it on the left. And I'll try and find something that they're interested in and tie that in to my expert comments. So what I mean by that is I'll say, hi, I know that you've opened this a couple of times, the average age of a first time buyer. Would you be interested in exclusive expert commentary on how this impacts women? I know that you wrote an opinion piece on how hard it is to be a home buyer as a woman. And that's what I'll go with. And then obviously you would hope that the journalist would then come back and say, yes, absolutely, thank you. Can you get that? And then I know that I've got the journalist that way. So I never send a mass expert comment. It's always personalized specifically for them. And it might be seen as more time consuming, but in my eyes, it's worthy of the time because you know that you're going to get the coverage. That's why they've asked for it.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a big proponent of kind of the personalized follow-up email or chaser email where you're referencing something,
Uh-huh.
either a post that they've just written or a
Mhm.
story they've just written, or yeah, something they've posted about on social. When you're emailing these and kind of coming up with that unique angle there,
Mhm.
do you have to typically do much research for? Do you spend time in that? I feel like that can sometimes, again, like the process of that and pulling in people and getting commentary. Yeah, talk to me about kind of getting sign offs and that sort of thing. Because you mentioned this earlier, like pieces get stuck in compliance. I know in the finance space,
Yeah.
like that kind of stuff can become a nightmare.
Yeah, no, it's totally understandable. In terms of actually sending it to the journalist, I only ever send it to journalists that I know will be interested in it, and that's based on me finding an article that's like a similar topic. So, a lot of research goes into the creation of the actual seeding list, the contact list, as opposed to the follow up. Like the follow up should be easier because I did all the planning for it. In terms of compliance, like yes, you're right. Um, and it's gonna differ. It's gonna differ depending on the industry. Um, Finance, everything has to go through compliance, make sure it's factual, make sure you're not trying to be too salesy, this kind of thing. But I think have again been quite fortunate that my compliance team know that if it's a comment and it's like reactive, they'll sign it off quicker. And coming from agency experience, I think it's building a relationship and really at the beginning setting the foundation of explaining what digital PR is, why sign off like quickly is important, and really pushing that. So pushing it in a mindful way, I should be clear. So when a new client starts, really getting them on board with what digital PR is, how they can help you be successful. And then when it comes to actually sending over an expert comment to be signed off for them to write it and explaining it, what the deadline is, putting it in the subject line, explaining why it matters. Is it your client's dream publication that they mentioned on onboarding? Does the journalist have a deadline of 2 p.m. that they need? Like you would with the email, expressing urgency, making the journalist care, make the client care as well.
Yeah, that's such great advice. Just kind of building those relationships I found is the easiest way to kind of break down some of that red tape or whatever you want to call it. So another aspect of your pitching is, I think, pitching to social, right? So in your LinkedIn post, you mentioned about getting coverage on Instagram. Can you talk a little bit about how you pitch that? Is that something you do for all your pitches?
Uh, Yeah, so I will actually be completely transparent. I mentioned in the LinkedIn post that it got coverage on GoFund Yourself, but that was actually a total surprise in the best of ways. GoFund Yourself is
Oh, nice.
yeah, it was organic coverage. But GoFund Yourself, for those that don't know, is like a financial Instagram that helps people build their financial knowledge. And it's an Instagram account I've followed for many years. So imagine my surprise when I opened my phone and the research we've collected is there. Like, I literally gasped, put it straight into Slack and was really happy. But I just want to set the precedent that that was through organic coverage, which I'm going to say it's a bad thing that I didn't send it to them, but it's actually a good thing that it caught their attention. I have tried to send them stuff before, but couldn't get their email. That being said, yes, social media is so important with digital PR right now. Um, I think what you should do when you're outreaching a campaign is be mindful of relevant social media accounts that you'd like to be published on, regardless of what industry you're on. Even if you're in the home sector, Ideal Home have Instagram, TikTok, that kind of thing. Like there are publications you can target. Find their social media and specific um, email address, whether it's on their website or little hackers. They often have it in their about section on Facebook for some reason, and find it that way and make sure you're outreaching it to them as well as publications and then also radio publications. It's no longer just about generating citations and link building, it's about the overall brand awareness. Um, you go on your phone, you find out who Mojo Mortgages is through an Instagram, you then obviously then get a sponsored ad on Google. Like it's all part of the marketing funnel and should be implemented as part of digital PR.
Yeah, I love that. I actually just had a conversation yesterday on for a future podcast with my former boss when I was with the Grit Group and speaking about how, SEO these days, SEOs, digital marketers shouldn't feel as kind of disconnected from the rest of the marketing mix as they do now. Like brand is such a powerful thing and AI overviews, the helpful content, like all this stuff. Google just being deemed a monopoly, like Google might not even be here, might not even be the most, prominent search tool. So getting your brand out in as many different ways as you can. I mean, that was going to be my follow-up question is like, what about the clients that just care about links? But it sounds like you have that mindset where, it shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Links are good if you want to play that game, right? But like ultimately the name of the game is to increase the brand awareness. This is public relations, right? Like it's in the name.
No, for sure. It's also again like what I said before, comes down to collaboration. Like since moving in house, I've had the privilege of working, and we've got a social media manager called TC who's fantastic, and it's been really great collaborating with her on ideas. So when I worked like in an agency, we didn't have social media, so it wasn't segregated because it didn't exist. Whereas in house, I've realized the power in like the force that can come from collaborating with digital PR and social media. So one thing you can do, and that I've obviously started doing in the last 6 months, is outreach in TikToks. Such a 29, in fact, not even 29-year-old thing to say. So that makes me sound like I'm younger. But one thing I've noticed is that there's obviously a lot of video journalists out there, and they're obviously basically the engagement that they need to build is trying to keep you on the page for as long as possible so that the bounce rate isn't as low. So work with your social media manager to be sharing tips from your actual in-house experts or your data, creating it into a video and outreaching that to video journalists. I guess other ways as well that you can work with social media managers is experimenting, like A/B testing. So one thing we did recently is we had a campaign, it did really well, and then we posted it on social media a couple of weeks later, and we realized that like people will comment on it and giving us their opinion, and that is just a gold mine. Like if like it's PR gold mine, finding out how people feel. And journalists often don't have the time to reply and be honest about how they feel about your campaign. But on Instagram, everyone wants to give you their opinion on everything, and just in social media in general. So actually reading what people are saying and whether they find it positive, negative, interesting, boring, whether they want more, like use it for social engagement. So one thing we noticed is that people were saying, this is really cool, but can we also get it on blah, blah, blah? And now we're going to create a tool that allows that to happen. And yeah, it's just been great for ideation as a whole. And then finally, I think another thing you can use for social media is giving a second push and finding out what angle works for this re-angle of PR. So when you see how people interact with the post, what is it that they find them engaging? That could even inspire your hook when you go out with your second pitch, your third pitch, and based on what
Mm.
people are saying. So literally just experiment, be interested in all aspects of the business and try and collaborate with as many people as possible.
Yeah, I mean, great advice, invaluable, I think, for people who are, struggling to find coverage maybe, or just only focused on a few spots. I feel like the social can sometimes be a backdoor into some of these,
Yeah.
dream publications. Just this to get specific, like you mentioned, reaching out or like finding video journalists, finding social accounts for these different pubs. Are you then kind of reaching out twice? Like you'd reach out to, let's use, Daily Mail. Like, are you reaching out to the social account and a journalist
Yeah.
separately at
Yeah.
the Daily Star or whatever? Okay.
Because they'll be completely different. So it'd be like the social media account of like the Daily Star, for example. So it could end up on their TikTok, whereas the video journalist is literally their job is to cover the news and include a video. Like the specific journalists for videos, which obviously didn't exist a couple of years ago. But like I said, it's to keep people on the page and for longer. So you're almost making their job easier, but also actually a lot of brands don't do social media or make videos, so it means you might have the upper hand against your competitors as well.
And sorry, did you say that you create videos sometimes to pitch to the social
Yes.
team?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
So you'll
So
have a campaign like this mortgage campaign that you did, like you'll create like a TikTok video and send them that to repost?
exactly that, yes. And vice versa as well. Like we've had campaigns go really well on social media, and then I've transformed them into PR pitches as well. And that's what I mean about the whole importance of collaboration. Or sometimes I might think of an idea and not have time for it, but I know it'll perform really well on social media. So it's almost like actually doing something with the ideas and that you know will do well, but there's not enough hours in the day instead of you doing everything, so
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, keeping that little notebook of ideas. It sounds like you're kind of like me. I have one of those off to the side. I just dump all those ideas on all the time.
yeah.
Well, Becky, I think we should leave it there. There's
Mhm.
just a ton of information and ton of great tips that you gave. Everybody, you can find Becky on LinkedIn. I highly recommend checking it out. She, posts this kind of stuff, and hopefully will continue to post all this great knowledge that she has. So, Becky, yeah, thanks so much for joining us, and good luck with the rest of your campaigns at Mojo. And everybody keep an eye out for that.
No worries at all. It's been a real privilege. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
And just another reminder for everybody: like, subscribe, share. Let us know what you think in the comments. I'm sure Bekki would be happy to answer questions, comments, that sort of thing. So thanks again for listening and watching, everybody. Have a great day.